If you've been following everything that's been going on, you might be wondering, what the hell am I doing in this studio talking to you as if I have not actually left for Ottawa? And well, I have not left for Ottawa. Yesterday evening, I went to my local airport and I experienced flight delays with Air Canada. And it got delayed so far before the plane even took off that I had already missed my connecting flight from Vancouver to Toronto, and they were offering to put me up in a hotel, and I would have already missed question period. I would be arriving like in an hour and a half from now had I actually boarded that flight. So yeah, obviously I did not get on the plane because the whole point was to be sitting in the freaking gallery literally right now as we speak. And before my plane took off, it was already set in stone that that was not going to happen. So wow, it's been a really shitty past 12 hours. But I am here and I will be going to Ottawa. Don't worry. I'll be going to Ottawa. I'll be doing a whole thing. I'm actually going to do a meetup when I go. I'm going to put some more effort into planning. I'll be going in a couple of weeks, possibly. I'm going to turn it into a whole thing. I'll be going for a little bit more time. I'm going to give myself a little bit more leeway so it's not rushed, so that I'm arriving literally the day of. Because wow, Air Canada sucks. I'll just say it right now, at least my experience with Air Canada last night sucked. And I have to deal with booking or getting my points back and all that stuff. So that's not an issue. But nonetheless, we are here. We're going to be streaming question period as if this never happened. So before we get into the stream, everybody, I do want to encourage everyone to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. Chances are you already are subscribed. But if you're not, might as well subscribe and turn that bell notification on so you can be notified of upcoming videos, but more importantly, these types of live streams. This is Caucus Leader Day, so you're going to see Justin Trudeau, you're going to see Pierre Poilievre, and Jagmeet Singh appear, and the Bloc Québécois, whatever the hell his name is. I see in the comments people are saying CSIS delayed my flight. I mean, you never know. You never know, man. I was furious in the airport. In my tiny local airport, I was absolutely furious. I was steaming out of the ears. You got one delay, you get a text message right when you go through security that your flight's been delayed 45 minutes. You're like, oh, well, that sucks. And that's cutting it close for the connection. And then before it even comes close to boarding time, you get another text message saying, yeah, no, we've really messed up and now your flight's delayed beyond repair. So it is what it is. But we're here. Before I switch screens, though, I do want to encourage everyone to go get situated. Go get yourself a coffee. I've got my coffee right here with all of me stickers on it. Because this is going to be a stream that you're not going to want to, pause or walk away from, because it is Caucus Leader Day. So there's going to be a lot of things happening. The big boys are at play. So get your coffee, get your beer, get your lunch, get your dinner, whatever it is you need to do. Get situated, because this is going to be a good one, folks. All right, without further ado, let's get into it here.
Wonderfully. In 2022 and 2023, this organization helped more than 3,000 people. Just imagine how many people it has helped over the past 40 years through its numerous activities, programs, groups, and individual consultations. Bravo to the dedicated members of the board of directors, to the volunteers, and to the general manager, Mr. Francis Lemieux. Long live OQPAC.
L'honorable député de London West.
As we commemorate the 30th year since the genocide against the Tutsis in 1994, I reflect on the journey of reconciliation, which is a never-ending road. I can't help but notice that those who have reconciled and lived side by side did it because justice prevailed. So today, on behalf of my constituents and survivors who are still grappling with what happened in April of 1994, I ask for two things, Mr. Speaker. One, that we as Canada, being a home to many survivors and families of survivors, that we designate the FDLR as a terrorist organization as it continues to kill many Tutsis in the region. Number two, that we commit to bringing the genocide participants to justice. Romeo Dallaire recently pointed to the many that have made Canada their home and live free without consequences. Last week, I saw firsthand how transformative it is when perpetrators ask for forgiveness and victims are able to provide it. There's no healing for the many grieved hearts who relive the genocide over and over again every April. And there's no justice if we leave room for the nihilism, revisionism, and the base that perpetrate anti-Tutsi hate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member.
People are
from
saying
Simcoe
WestJet.
North.
Yeah, I might have
Today
to
marks
consider
the
that
10th
next time.
anniversary of the
I got
passing of the
points,
late
right?
Jim
That's why I went
Flaherty,
with Air
former
Canada.
Finance Minister of Canada. At the time, the news of his passing was a shock to many colleagues in this place. Sometimes the stark recognition of our own mortality is a reminder that puts our minor differences in perspective. His career was dedicated to public service. In fact, his favorite speech was entitled "Public Service is Good for You," challenging young people to enter careers of public service for its reward and fulfilling nature. Many of his accomplishments will withstand the test of time: the Registered Disability Savings Plan, the Working Income Tax Benefit, and the start of Ready, Willing, and Able. While Jim would have strong opinions on the challenges facing the country today and the budget, I suspect what would matter most are the many accomplishments of Christine and the pride he would have in his 3 boys: Quinn, who recently welcomed a child; Galen, who will marry this summer; and John, who works at the Ability Centre. Let us remember Jim fondly, and let us extol the virtues of public service and encourage others to rise to the challenge to serve the public good.
Hear, hear.
Looks like Trudeau stopped your flight.
The honourable member from Beaches, East York.
Mr. Speaker, Dr. Anne Innes Dagg, the woman who loved giraffes, was a pioneering zoologist, groundbreaking biologist, animal rights activist, feminist, and professor. She earned worldwide recognition for her studies of giraffes in the wild in 1956, wrote the Bible of Giraffes, still used by scientists to this day, and authored dozens of articles and books on giraffes, of course, but also on gender equality in academia. Anne was appointed to the Order of Canada by the Governor-General in 2019, and I don't have the time to list off her many well-earned awards and honors. But on a personal note, let me say that she was also very kind with her time. If you haven't seen Ali Reed's documentary about Anne, the woman who loves giraffes, you should. Anne took the time to join us and patiently answer questions at a screening of the film some 5 years ago. She left an impression on all of us that night, just as she now leaves a legacy for all of us in the Anne Innes Dagg Foundation.
Thanks for joining the membership.
Dedicated to promoting the harmonious coexistence of humans and wildlife, and built on Anne's belief that we should treat people, animals, and their surroundings with the same respect.
Official CG crew came in.
The honourable member from Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to announce April is Oral Health Month, featuring National Dental Hygienist Week from April 4th to 10th. This annual event is sponsored by Canadian Dental Hygienists Association and focuses on the importance of maintaining good oral health practices and helping Canadians understand the role of dental hygiene profession in preventing and addressing oral health issues. Over 31,000 dental hygienists nationwide celebrate this week under the theme of Oral Health for Total Health, highlighting that taking care of your mouth, teeth, and gums have a positive impact on other aspects of our lives. As the federal government roll out the new Canadian Dental Care Plan, which has a focus on preventive care, dental hygienists will play a front and center role to help improve oral health outcomes for all Canadians. This April, let's help everyone in Canada learn about oral health for total health. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Portage Lisker.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has added more to the national debt than all previous Prime Ministers combined. This costly coalition's out-of-control spending has resulted in Canada's $46 billion in spending just to service our debt. This is more money than the federal government sends to provinces for health care. Their deficits are fueling inflation and have driven up interest rates. But it's not just Conservatives pointing this out, Mr. Speaker. Both the Bank of Canada and former Liberal Finance Minister John Manley told the Prime Minister that he was pressing on the inflationary gas pedal. And now a leading economist says interest rates cuts may be delayed because of high government spending. But Conservatives have a plan to fix the budget. In next week's budget, the Liberals need to cap the spending with a dollar-for-dollar rule to bring down interest rates and inflation. They must find $1 in savings for every new dollar in spending. It's just common sense. Because my 3-month-old daughter Maeve and her generation should not be shackled to pay the bill of the reckless spending of this costly coalition.
Hey. He's fairly new, right? He won the last by-election.
From Humber River, Black Creek.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand in the House today with a heavy heart as we mourn one of the worst earthquakes to strike Taiwan in the last 25 years, with at least 16 dead and more than 1,000 people injured.
Let's try and get to 250 likes here before the stream or before question period begins, folks.
The remarkable resilience
just
of the
about 100
Taiwanese
more.
people. As we extend our thoughts and prayers to those affected, let us also recognize the unwavering determination of the Taiwanese people. It's important to acknowledge that Taiwan has been an ally to so many nations in their times of need. Their generosity and compassion have touched lives around the world. Now it is our turn to offer our unwavering support to the people of Taiwan. In this time of devastation, Canada extends our hand in friendship and assistance to Taiwan as they recover from this earthquake. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member from Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 8 years, Northern Canadians cannot afford this Prime Minister anymore. Housing starts are at historic lows, according to a recent RBC report, and this trend is only going to get worse under these NDP Liberals. Nunavut is deep in this housing crisis, with over 3,000 homes desperately needed and climbing, with little being done by this Prime Minister. The NDP Liberal Prime Minister has no plan to fix the housing crisis, according to his own Housing Department CEO. And making life far worse, the Liberal carbon tax is applied to farmers. A package of hot dogs in Nunavut is $19. 1 gallon of ice cream is $29. 1 kilogram of bacon is $42. Canadians are tired of being told that they're better off under this Prime Minister because it simply isn't true. When will this Prime Minister make life better in the North, axe the tax on farmers, and build the homes?
The honourable member from Peterborough, Kawartha.
After 8 years of this Liberal NDP Prime Minister, Canadians require 64% of their pre-taxed income to afford housing, if they can even find housing. Michelle from Kawartha Lakes found work in Toronto, but is couch surfing because she, like 9 in 10 Canadians in this country, believe they will never own a home.
Oh, here we go again. Here we go again with
we
the lag.
We are a G7 country, and it is over $1,900 for a one-bedroom
Every time,
apartment.
it's like clockwork.
Rent has doubled, mortgage defaults are on the rise, and housing starts are down. 10 cities across this country look like scenes from the Great Depression, and this Prime Minister has the audacity to say he's doing a great job. He's a failure. His solution? Increase the carbon tax by 23%, which will drive up housing prices even more. Canadians know better, and so do Conservatives. We will incentivize municipalities to build houses people can afford, and we will axe the tax to make the materials needed to build houses affordable. We will bring it home.
The honourable member from Don Valley West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I congratulate the community at Bessborough Drive Elementary and Middle School on its 100th anniversary. With its opening in December 1923, Bessborough became the first public school in Leaside and even served as the community's town hall. Wow. For a century, Bessborough Public School has been a place of academic excellence, committed to nurturing the minds of generations past, present, and future. Through my regular conversations with students, parents, and faculty, it's abundantly clear that Bessborough is more than an institution. It holds a special place in the hearts of many, with a legacy of familial ties spanning generations, from grandparents and parents to today's students, all proudly waving the Bessborough flag. On this great occasion, I extend my deep appreciation to the dedicated faculty, volunteers, and students who have contributed to the enduring legacy of Bessborough Public School. May this milestone continued excellence for generations to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear, hear.
Colleagues, you may want to keep the noise down because we're going to be listening to the next intervention in the Nuktatuk. The honourable member from Nunavut.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't always have celebratory statements in this place. Although many people are still struggling, there are some worth sharing. Nunavut reached a milestone because of Tagak Curley's vision. And that because Tagak Curley's vision became a reality. I thank him for retaining Inuit laws, values, and principles taught to him by our ancestors. I thank him for helping to modernize Inuit society by leading the way for Inuit to govern. Through his vision, community negotiators worked with elders and community members what terms to include in what would later become the Nunavut Land Claim Agreement. I thank the community negotiators.
The Honourable Member for Pierre les Patriotes Verchères. To promote the French language in Quebec, we need to share it with all new Quebecers. But of course, our national language can't be learned overnight. And that's why I'd like to salute the initiative by Provigo and Boucherville that warmed the hearts of all Quebecers. The grocery store provides all its new employees with a button that reads, J'apprends le français. Merci de parler lentement, which means I'm learning French. Thank you for speaking slowly. What an extraordinary way to encourage employees while they learn. What an extraordinary way to encourage customers to take part in this learning process through cooperation, patience, and kindness. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I'd like to thank the owner of Provigo, Mona Turbide, and the person in charge of the French language training, Martine Colombe. I'd also like to congratulate all the French education workers for their perseverance, and I hope that this initiative will snowball throughout Quebec. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Barrie-Innisfil.
Canadian families and businesses are paying the price with an NDP Liberal government that's addicted to debt and deficits. Record high deficits and carbon taxes driving up inflation are increasing the costs on everything, including the necessities of life. Interest rate increases fueled by NDP Liberal spending and increased debt is punishing Canadian families and businesses, and we're just now starting to see the full impact increases in mortgage rates are having on mortgage renewals, and it's a crisis. No Prime Minister has added more to the national debt than this one, and through it all, he's been aided and abetted by his NDP coalition partners. Anyone who has any sense at all knows you don't put more fuel on an already out-of-control debt and deficit fire. It's time for a return to fiscal common sense in this country.
No, man, we need to increase taxes.
To bring down interest rates and inflation with a dollar-for-dollar rule that finds $1 in savings for every new dollar spent. Common sense conservatives will not support the budget unless it axes the tax, builds homes, not photo ops, and caps spending.
We need to increase the rain tax so it rains more, so it helps put out forest fires. Come on, guys, common sense.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. April is Sikh Heritage Month, and no matter where it is you go in Canada, you'll find an intense amount of pride in Sikh heritage, Mr. Speaker. The many contributions in every aspect of our society. It's a great pleasure for me to be able to stand in my place and recognize the month as a significant time for us to appreciate, love, and better understand Sikhism and how it contributes to the very fabric of Canadian society, Mr. Speaker. I would encourage members to visit Gurdwara, talk to members of our Punjabi heritage community, get a better understanding of how Sikhism affects our Canadian heritage. It's something all of us should embrace, no matter what our faith is, Mr. Speaker. So let's encourage our constituents to get that better understanding of Sikhism. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions orales.
Oral questions. Questions orales. Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Here we go. He looks sharp today.
This Prime Minister's incompetence is just not worth the cost. With his excessive spending at the federal level, he has caused so many messes in the military, immigration, inflation, the housing market, and so many more. But instead of cleaning up his own mess, he's just creating more problems with expensive promises that interfere with provincial jurisdiction. Why is this Liberal Prime Minister bringing his incompetence into areas of Quebec competency? The Honourable Minister of Public Services. Mr. Speaker, it's quite humorous to hear the word incompetence in the mouth of the Leader of the Opposition when he was Housing Minister, who created only 6 affordable housing units for the whole country during his term. Recently, he accused Quebec municipalities of being incompetent.
Oh, you know what? Trudeau's testifying today.
With Quebec City, we started 324 affordable housing units. Who's really incompetent here? The Leader of the Opposition with his 6 units, or Quebec municipalities with hundreds? The Honourable Leader of the Opposition, when I was Housing Minister, housing costs were half of what they are today.
That is true.
And hundreds of thousands of housing units were created with low interest rates. Today, we learned that the Bank of Canada will not be lowering interest rates. And the Governor of the Bank of Canada has already said that if governments spend too much, interest rates will remain high, which will send people into bankruptcy. Will this Prime Minister finally accept my common sense plan? A dollar-for-dollar plan to balance the budget and bring down interest rates. The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition was just talking about the government of Quebec, and I talked about Quebec municipalities. Now, with the Quebec government, we signed an agreement to create 8,000 new affordable housing units. During his term as Housing Minister, the Leader of the Opposition created 6 affordable housing units. And yet, he called Quebec municipalities incompetent. When will he agree to come with me to meet with the Quebec city leaders to apologize in person?
The Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'll never apologize for keeping housing costs low.
There you go, buddy.
But if you were hoping for some interest rate relief today as a mortgage holder, as someone with a small business loan or a line of credit, you got some bad news that the Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Rates are staying high long because, as the Governor of the Bank of Canada said, if government spending grows, then interest rates will have to stay high to combat the resulting inflation. Why won't the Prime Minister accept my common sense plan to fix the budget with a dollar-for-dollar law to bring down rates?
Oh yeah, they did the rate announcement today. Stayed at 5%.
Mr. Speaker, it's possible to be prudent fiscally and have strong social programs as well. That's exactly what our government does. With the AAA credit rating, with the lowest debt-to-GDP ratio in the G7, with historically low unemployment. At the same time, we have a national school food program on the table of $1 billion, Mr. Speaker, supports for childcare and early learning, as well as for renters and homeowners. That's what we do on this side of the House. Every day is a great day to fight for Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Every day is not a great day when you're living in a tent city, or when you've had your mortgage double, or when you are with the families 1 in 4 children who can't get enough food, and they put forward a food program that doesn't have any food. Instead, what they've done is doubled the national debt and driven up interest rates. Today we learned that the Bank of Canada is unable to bring rates down because the Prime Minister continues to make massive multi-billion-dollar inflationary spending. Why won't he follow my common sense plan to bring down the deficit and the rates?
Instead of giving government-funded programs, make life affordable.
Speaker, wages are growing faster than inflation. Under the Conservatives, poverty was at 14.5%. When we replaced the Conservatives, we brought it down to 7.4%. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to invest in Canadians with the supports for affordable housing, for renters, for early learning and childcare, and because of our work, we will make life fairer for Canadians, unlike the Conservative leader who is here for himself.
She had to read that last part off her script. That's so funny.
The Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we're finding out today from the Bank of Canada that the Prime Minister is not worth the cost. In September, the bank governor said that if government spending were to grow, then interest rates would have to stay high. That was echoed by the former bank governor and incoming Liberal leader, Mark Carney, who indicated that he does not expect rates to fall quickly, and that is partly because of a lack of fiscal discipline. So if he won't listen to me, why won't he listen to his successor and understand that he's not worth the cost of high interest rates?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Man, drop a W in the chat for Pierre. Chihuahua. Oh, he's the only Liberal that's got a dog in him. Let's see the W's in the chat for Pierre, folks. Let's go. Let's see the W's.
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I hope the Conservative will listen this time because Canadians are watching at home. Mr. Speaker, we will take no lessons from the Conservative. On this side of the House, we have a plan to build more houses. We have a plan to build more prosperity in this country. We have a plan to create more jobs, Mr. Speaker. On the other side, they have slogan, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are smart. They understand that slogans don't build homes. They understand that slogan don't create jobs. They understand that slogan don't create prosperity. Mr. Speaker, every day is a good day to fight for Canadians. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, Liberals don't get nothing done. Nothing gets done. Hey, Pierre got the Conservatives to stand up. Look at that. Oh, man. Even though Trudeau's not there, it still seems like a good day to be there in person. Shit.
If this goes on, I'm certain that the honourable member for La Prairie will think that it's about him. The honourable member for La Prairie.
Of course the Bloc thinks it's about them.
For 3 weeks, the Prime Minister has been making pre-budget announcements in Quebec jurisdiction. But not today. Today he is at the foreign interference inquiry, so he doesn't have time for domestic interference. Health, schools, housing, dental care, childcare. It's the Liberals, not the Bloc, who think they are governing Quebec. Ottawa has the money, but Quebec has the expertise. If Ottawa wants to help Quebec, it should just increase transfers. What is this government waiting for? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's always a good time to speak about the impacts that government investments have for Quebecers. Let's start with childcare, a $6 billion investment over 4 years, which will help families and especially women. 35,000 new childcare spots, which will of course help families, which will reduce poverty, increase gender equality, help children, all while respecting Quebec jurisdiction. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, this is a real budget striptease. One little piece at a time. At the rate it's going, the budget lockdown on April 16th will be no longer than 5 minutes. There'll be nothing left to announce. And what will be left to spend after using billions of dollars to interfere with Quebec's jurisdiction? I know that competence would interfere with this Liberal government's brand. Look at Phoenix, passports, ArriveCan, asylum seekers, but that's no reason to violate Quebec jurisdiction. Could this government please transfer money instead of interfering? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to answer another question, to give a second example of how we're working well with Quebec on housing this time. $1.8 billion in an agreement that was signed a few weeks ago that will enable
He just looks and sounds like an evil person.
Housing than ever before.
Maybe because he's bald and he said
benefit
$1 billion.
Quebecers, especially lower-income Quebecers.
The Honourable Member from Burnaby South.
Yesterday, the Assembly of First Nations made it clear that this government is letting down Indigenous people. Right now, the Indigenous funding gap in infrastructure has risen to an astronomical $350 billion. That's not just a number on paper. That means Indigenous people are living in moldy homes. That means Indigenous people don't have access to clean drinking water. Why did this Liberal government turn their back on Indigenous people?
Yeah, Trudeau's just left Indigenous communities to dry.
Mr. Speaker, for decades and decades, Canada has underinvested in Indigenous communities, and this government is putting a stop to that. We've increased funding for housing on First Nations by 1,100%, Mr. Speaker, and while we know there is a long way to go, I want to thank the AFN for co-writing this report with us. It's very important to understand the size of the gap so that we can work even more quickly to close it together.
It's not just Indigenous people that this government is letting down, it's also Canadians living with disabilities. Right now, Canadians living with disabilities are disproportionately living in poverty. And according to Angus Reid, 90% of Canadians support a Canadian disability benefit. But this Liberal government continues to delay the implementation of this benefit, and the Conservatives voted against it. So why is this government continuing to delay? Enough is enough. When will people get their checks? When will people actually get the benefit?
Here, here.
The Honourable Minister for Diversity, Inclusion and Disability, People with Disabilities.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Member knows extremely well that Canada Disability Benefit is another concrete step to reduce poverty and to support Canadians who need it the most.
Isn't Canada getting rid of all the pension funds or something because we're so broke?
We're on track to deliver the benefit, Mr. Speaker. In the spirit of nothing without us, I want to take an opportunity to thank the disability community for their relentless advocacy and for the work that they have been doing, Mr. Speaker. We will get it right and we will get it out
the
for
work
Canadians
that the disability community's been doing?
The Honourable Member from Dufferin-Caledon.
Tina from Orangeville just sent me a photo from the Orangeville Food Bank. There's no juice, there's no cereal, and there's almost no diapers. This is because the people who used to donate food are now lined up for food. This is actually Canada after 8 years of this corrupt, incompetent NDP Liberal government. That's
right.
Will the Prime Minister finally show he has even a modicum of compassion for Canadians, pass Conservative Bill C-234 that will take all carbon taxes off all farmers so Canadians can once again afford food?
Common sense.
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
It is important in this country, and certainly Canadians understand that we address the climate crisis that is facing us. There are significant costs that we are facing, including issues around wildfires as we move forward, if we do not address climate change. But it is also important that we do that in a manner that is affordable. 8 out of 10 Canadians get more money back from the carbon rebate than they pay in the price on pollution. If you are going to take it away, as the Leader of the Opposition would do, you are actually attacking the poorest members in our society. Shame on you.
I'm going to ask all members, please, to not take the floor until the person who has the microphone has the opportunity to speak to all members, so we can hear the questions clearly, and we could also hear the answers clearly. The Honourable Member from Dufferin-Caledon.
The great Liberal lies. The budget will balance itself, and the rebate check is larger than the cost of the carbon tax. Everyone knows that is not actually what's happened. And you know who else has joined the carbon tax revolt? 6 premiers in this country who are calling for a carbon tax summit. Newfoundland and Labrador, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Ontario, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. Will this out-of-touch Prime Minister actually call this conference the Carbon Tax Summit? Or is he too busy hiding because he called the premiers liars?
So, colleagues, I'd like to remind all colleagues on all sides of the House that we must be very careful about using the word lies. Although it wasn't directed at an individual, it is really important that we
stupid parliamentary rules.
It can be disturbing and can disturb the affairs of the House. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Look, on this side of the House, we actually believe in facts and we believe in science. The Honourable Member makes statements that actually have zero basis in fact. 200 economists in this country signed a letter last to 2 weeks ago saying that 8 out of 10 Canadians get more money back. The Parliamentary Budget Officer says that 8 out of 10 Canadians get money back. They can make up all of the things that they want to, but the facts are on our side. It is an issue that addresses affordability for Canadians, particularly those on modest incomes. It is a plan to address climate change. Those reckless, irresponsible Conservatives on the other side of the House should be ashamed.
Again, I'd like to remind members to please stay away from language that could be, that certainly it's getting closer and closer to unparliamentary. The Honourable Member from Chilliwack Hope.
After 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, many Canadians can no longer afford to feed their families. Last year, 2 million Canadians visited food banks in a single month alone. But instead of bringing down the cost of food, the Prime Minister increased the carbon tax on groceries by 23% on April 1st. Clearly, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Instead of making things worse, will the Prime Minister finally cut the cost of food by adopting Conservative Bill C-234 to take all carbon taxes off of farmers in next week's budget?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
It's important that we talk in this House about all of the supports that we're providing to farmers and the agricultural community in the context of our fight against climate change, Mr. Speaker. But I would also point out that after having Conservative senators threaten female senators on amendments in this bill, this is a private member's bill that they can prioritize at any moment and bring to a vote in this House. It's up to them. C-234's fate is decided on the Conservative side of the House, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Chilliwack Hope.
Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government is completely out of touch with ordinary Canadians who can't feed their families with phony Liberal photo ops. Canadians are already lining up at the food banks in record numbers, and increasing the carbon tax on farmers and food is only making things worse. 70% of Canadians want this government to axe the tax, and half a dozen premiers are demanding an emergency meeting on the carbon tax crisis. So will the Prime Minister stop hiding and hold a carbon tax conference with the premiers and listen to their plans to axe the tax?
That's right. The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I would implore the Conservatives in opposition to actually use facts when they actually make statements. 200 economists in this country have validated the fact that the carbon price is the most efficient way to reduce emissions and is done in a manner that is affordable. When Premier Moe actually came before the committee a couple of weeks ago, journalists actually called the statements that he was making, which are the same as what this fellow is making, a parade of nonsense and completely dishonest. I totally agree.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Liberal Prime Minister, rents have doubled, and our youth can no longer dream of buying a first home. Record lines at food banks. Everything this Prime Minister touches just withers. He's breaking everything in Ottawa, and now he wants to bring his incompetence to Quebec.
I'm glad everyone realizes how toxic Trudeau is.
Will the Prime Minister finally understand that this is just making things worse for Quebecers? The Honourable Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities. Mr. Speaker, on the contrary, we are investing to build housing in Quebec. For example, the Accelerated Housing Fund in Quebec has enabled us to sign an agreement with the province, $1.8 billion, to build 8,000 affordable housing units throughout the province. The Conservatives are against that investment. It's incredible. We will continue to invest to improve the situation and build affordable housing more quickly. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, how can we trust this government when we think of the way they manage everything, the border, the armed forces, ArriveCan, EI? Everything this government does goes wrong for 8 years, and now they're adding insult to injury by interfering with Quebec jurisdiction. Does this Prime Minister understand that this will make the situation worse for Quebecers and all Canadians? The Honourable Minister of Public Services. My colleague, the Minister for Housing, spoke about the 8,000 affordable housing units that will be built by Quebec municipalities. We already know that the Leader of the Opposition had 6 affordable housing units built when he was Minister of Housing. And what the member may not know is that his own riding, there is a project that built 163 affordable housing units, which is about 25 times more than his leader managed to build throughout his entire term and throughout the entire country. The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Now, in the expression area of jurisdiction, there's the word jurisdiction. When you have a toothache, you don't call up the barber, and you shouldn't call up the federal government either. Federal dental coverage is still not available, and yet already everyone is mad at Ottawa. Seniors are mad because they were promised free dental care, but instead they're going to have to pay. Dentists are mad because Ottawa is blaming them. And all of this because Ottawa, which knows nothing about the matter, promised free dental care without totting up the bill. Why not instead act like the tooth fairy and slip the money under Quebec's pillow? The Honourable Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, it is essential that everyone throughout the country and each and every Quebecer can receive dental care. That is our objective, and that is what we will do. In the spirit of cooperation, I will continue to work with the government of Quebec. The Bloc Québécois is always trying to pick arguments and find problems, whereas our government is finding solutions and ensuring that everyone gets the health care they need. The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, Ottawa could send money to Quebec's health insurance program for dental care. Quebec is ready to do that, but Ottawa is instead creating red tape, redundancy, and is making everyone mad, even though the program hasn't even started yet. With housing, Ottawa could give the money right away, but instead it's going to lead to a constitutional conflict until 2025. The federal government is not like King Midas. Instead of touching things and they turn to gold, it touches things and they turn to mold. Why continue interfering with the jurisdiction? Why would we let them do that when everything takes longer and is ultimately worse? The Honourable Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, the system for dental coverage is simple. People will receive a card, and with that card, dentists throughout the country can use the same system as they do with any other kind of dental insurance, and then very easily, patients will receive necessary services. If Quebec wishes to manage the system, that's not a problem. We can work together. However, it's absolutely essential that the service be available immediately for Quebecers, and that's what we'll do.
The Honourable Member from Battleford's Lloydminster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 8 years of this Prime Minister, Canadians are struggling to put food on the table. Food banks received a record 2 million visits in a single month last year alone, and a million more Canadians are expected to visit food banks again this year. The carbon tax is driving up the cost of groceries and everything else. Struggling families are desperate for relief in next week's budget. So, Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister axe the carbon tax on farmers so the food prices can go down?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, the Honourable Member is saying things that are devoid of facts, and in fact, what she is proposing will actually take money away from folks who live on modest incomes. 8 out of 10 families get more money back than they pay in the price on pollution, and it works directly inverse to income. It's those people that live on most modest incomes that would be most impacted by their plan to cut the carbon rebate. That is reckless, that is irresponsible, and it puts at risk people who live in this country on modest incomes.
The chair did not hear the comments by the minister. Unfortunately, I wasn't paying attention, but there is so
unfortunately, I wasn't paying attention. Holy shit. You have one job, House Speaker.
The affairs of the House. The Honourable Member from Battleford's Lloydminster.
Actually, Mr. Speaker, Canadians are painfully aware that this Prime Minister and his NDP Liberal government are not worth the cost. Last week's carbon tax hike is driving up the cost of gas, groceries, and home heating. Families are struggling, like I said, to put food on the table, and they cannot afford higher costs. Next week's budget must take the foot off the gas of the rising grocery prices. So once again, Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister axe the tax on farmers and make food more affordable for Canadians?
Absolutely. The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would suggest to my honourable colleague across the House, who is from the great province of Saskatchewan, that she go and have a conversation with Dr. Brent Dolter at the University of Regina, who has said 8 out of 10 Canadian families get more money back, and it's those that actually live on modest incomes that do the best on a net benefit basis. It is an affordability program, but it is also a program to address the climate crisis, which imperils the future of our children. The fact that these folks have zero plan to address the climate issue and they don't seem to care at all about it is reckless and it is irresponsible.
I'm certain all members
What's reckless,
would
man,
like
is
to listen to the honourable member from Northumberland, Peterborough South ask his question and to receive a question, an answer and response. The honourable member.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has a superpower. It's the ability to spend other people's money. But I'd like to remind him that it's not his money he's spending. It's the hard-earned dollars of Canadians.
Trudeau is Canada's wife.
He has no respect for Canadians or their hard-earned dollars. Mr. Speaker, he's just not worth the cost. Will his government commit to a pay-as-you-go rule in the upcoming budget to help fix the financial disaster they caused?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, an accurate representation of the facts would be the following. First of all, we have a AAA credit rating. That's by an independent, objective observer of our economy. Second of all, with regards to expenditures, we on this side of the House invest in Canadians, especially in vulnerable Canadians. $10 a day child care, early childhood learning and education, a national school program. Meanwhile, they vote against. They vote against dental care. They vote against pharmacare. Mr. Speaker, every day is a great day to fight for Canadians, and that's exactly what we'll do.
The honourable member from Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While the Liberals deflect, deny, and gaslight, common sense Conservatives will remain laser focused on the affordability crisis. Bill C-234 is back before this House, and the Liberals have a chance to help Canadians by reducing food costs, by reducing the burden on farmers, which will ultimately make everything more affordable. Will they finally give farmers a break? Will they finally give Canadians a break by reducing and eliminating the carbon tax on farmers?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Bill C-234 is a Conservative private member's bill that party can elect to bring to this House for a vote at any time. I would invite the honourable member to talk to his House leadership, and we'll get on with the vote for C-234.
L'honorable député de Rose.
The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, rent is expensive, groceries are expensive, everything is expensive. Quebecers are suffering, while the CEOs of big grocery stores are gilding their pockets on their backs. Instead of making this lot pay their fair share, the Liberals are giving them a $60 billion gift. Thank you who? Thank you to the Conservatives who gave this money, our money, when they were in power. Money that could be invested in social and affordable housing, in health, or in the fight against the climate crisis. But no, the Liberals prefer to give it to rich CEOs. Why do the Liberals continue to gild the pockets of big business? The Honourable Minister for Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. Mr. Speaker, my colleague will admit that we do invest for the most vulnerable Canadians throughout the country. We also invest in childcare, we invest in housing, and my colleague knows full well that the best way to stabilise grocery prices is to have more competitivity in our country. And that is exactly what we have done with the biggest competitivity reform in history. Everyone here knows that we want to help Canadians, and that is what we are doing and what we'll continue to do.
The honourable member from Winnipeg Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals' childcare plan forgets childcare workers, 96% whom are women, many facing a burnout crisis. And the recent Liberal announcement falls short of what experts are calling for. Childhood educators need better wages and working conditions to improve retention and recruitment. Meanwhile, the Conservatives are pushing privatized childcare that would even hurt workers even more. When will the minister stop with the disrespect and deliver a workforce strategy that allows workers to live in dignity?
The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for the question and her continued advocacy on behalf of early learning childcare workers. Our government continues to work with the provinces and territories, as evidenced most recently with our budget announcement, which includes loan forgiveness for early childhood educators who choose to work in rural and remote communities where we see the need for more educators and more childcare spaces. We'll continue to work on the workforce strategies with the provinces and territories to support this workforce.
The Honourable Member from St. John's East.
Mr. Speaker, tourism is one of the most important pillars of Atlantic Canada's economy. In my riding of St. John's East, the Bell Island Heritage Society #2 Mine Tour and Community Museum is a hidden gem. Recognized as a world-class destination, they are helping attract tourists to experience for themselves what our community has to offer. This, in turn, supports our local economy. Can the Minister for COIT tell us what efforts are being made to help our booming tourism sector grow even more, specifically in Atlantic Canada?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Big things are happening on the East Coast.
Yeah, no comment.
Minister of Tourism to announce the signing of the Atlantic Canada Agreement on Tourism. This $30 million agreement gives a major boost to more than 7,500 tourism businesses throughout Atlantic Canada. This support creates year-round opportunities, fuels innovative marketing, grows our Indigenous product, and brings more visitors to our beautiful corner of the world. With their breathtaking landscapes, delectable cuisine, and renowned hospitality, our region has so much to offer, and we're pulling out all the stops. You put Atlantic Canada on your bucket list this year.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years, this Prime Minister is simply not worth the cost. $500 billion later, and without controlling spending, this is the result. The cost of rent has doubled. 1 child in 4 in Canada does not have enough to eat, and 2 million Canadians have to go to food banks. That is the Liberal record after 8 years of this Prime Minister's mismanagement. And because the Prime Minister has invaded provincial jurisdictions, Quebecers' lives have become worse. The same for Canadians' lives. Will the Prime Minister withdraw from provincial jurisdictions and stop making life worse for Quebecers and Canadians? The Honourable Minister for Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague is right to speak about the cost of living. The cost of living is important for middle-class families and lower-class families. What is interesting is that they are against childcare benefits that reduce child poverty by 50% every month. They're against dental care for children and now for seniors. They are against investments in childcare services that in Quebec have shown us how important it is for gender equality, and now they seem to be against investments in housing, despite the fact that the Conservative leader didn't do much for housing when he was a housing minister. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to mention to the Minister that most things that he mentioned we voted for. However, what makes us angry and what makes Canadians angry is that this government has absolutely no efficiency when it comes to taking care of its own business. Passports, the armed forces, the border, immigration, the cost of living, and the cost of living. The list is long, Mr. Speaker. That is government in action. And what's this government doing right now? It's butting into provincial jurisdictions. It's not their business. So they can't even handle their own business, but they try to get into provincial businesses. When will the government finally step up and respect its own jurisdictions rather than butting into provincial jurisdictions? The Honourable Minister for Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I would like to remind my honourable colleague that in his riding there are about 12,000 families who every month, on the 20th of every month, get the Canada Childcare Benefit. That's about $500 every month, non-taxable for these families, which reduces poverty by 50% in his riding. Unfortunately, one of the first things that the Conservatives did in 2016 was to vote against this childcare benefit that is beneficial to millions of families and children in his riding in Canada. The Honourable Member from Mégantic-L'Érable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 8 years, this Prime Minister is simply not worth the cost of his own incompetence. His inflation policies have increased the cost of everything.
We're going to do something a little bit unusual. We're going to just bear with me. I'm going to be ending this stream in just a moment, okay, on House of Canada. Now, what I want everyone to do is I want everyone to head over to Mistersunshinebaby. Of course, you know, you just type that in. It'd be very weird if you're watching this and you don't know what that channel is. The link is also in the description. I will be streaming Justin Trudeau's testifying against foreign interference. I'm going to boot that stream up right now. I can't do it while I'm live on this account on this channel, okay? So everyone, the main guys are done with question period. They're just going in circles. They're doing the French translation. It's a moot point, as Joey Tribbiani says. Not a moot. It's a moot point, like a cow's opinion. Moo. It don't matter. We all want to see Trudeau testify. So let's all head over to Mr. Sunshine Baby and let's watch that happen. Okay. The stream will be live in like 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Give me 2 minutes to cancel this stream and head that and start that one over. Okay. For those that are upset about question period ending early, bless your heart. You're not missing out on anything. Carbon tax, carbon tax, carbon tax. Oui, oui, croissant, croissant. English translator. He said, oui, 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 croissant. That's it. There you go. Okay. And then look up in the gallery and that's it. There's no Nazis there today. So nothing interesting. I'll see you guys in 2 minutes on Mr. Sunshine Baby. Peace and love. Bye for now.